President Trump on his way to Florida stopped to take a question on tariffs on the way to Marine One and said this.
I think it's going very well. It was an operation like when a patient gets operated on, and it's a big thing. I said this would exactly be the way it is. We have $6 or $7 trillion coming into our country, and we've never seen anything like it. The markets are going to boom, the stock is going to boom, the country is going to boom, and the rest of the world wants to see, is there any way they can make a deal? They've taken advantage of us for many, many years. For many years, we've been at the wrong side of the ball, and I'll tell you what, I think it's going to be unbelievable. The thing that people have to talk about, we're up almost to $7 trillion of investment coming into our country, and you'll see how it's going to turn out. Our country's going to boom.
Man, welcome to the Dirty Folks podcast, man. Oh, shit. Wrong button. Welcome to the Dirty Folks podcast. I am your main man, Dirty Folks. And I appreciate y'all being here, man. I had this show prepared like for a week, but I've been going through things, man. I have 3 friends in the hospital, or 2 friends and a cousin in the hospital, all because of the flu or something. Something going on. They all went to the hospital last Sunday. I've been running back and forth to the hospital all week. I haven't had a chance to do this show, but it's for the best because we had a chance to watch how the tariffs have been working out. There are 195 countries in the world. 193 of them are part of the United Nations. We talk about one, China. Here's the funny thing about that, right? It's very possible that gamers are going to save us from a recession. Shout out to the gamers, bro. The irony of that is, that's not even China. That's Japan. Sony owned by Japan. iPhones come from Japan. Like all the electronic, all the tech that people are fighting in America are fighting against sanctions. It's because they want to get their PS5s that they ordered early. Go figure, right? But I don't even want to talk about that. There have been tariffs put on foreign affairs 3 times in American history, right? And every time it's done, we go into a deep recession. So I've been really trying to evaluate whether or not this will be the time that it works out. Maybe, maybe not. Time will tell. But whether it does or doesn't, you can play the short game. I want to show you guys something real quick. So as soon as America put their sanction game down quite flat, with 36%, a 36%, not sanctions, tariff, a 36% tariff worldwide on everybody except Israel and Egypt. Everybody else got a tariff. China clapped back. China clapped back.
Good morning and welcome to Morning Rush. I'm Patrick Terpstra in Washington.
Really? We're gonna put an ad.
Look at the headlines this hour. China strikes back in the trade war with the United States. Earlier this morning announcing it will raise tariffs on U.S. goods from 84% to 120%.
Let me pause that real quick. 84% tariff is wild. Just real quick, just as a common sense thing, right? If something costs $1 in China, it costs $1.84 in America. And now they say instead of $1.84, it's going to cost you $2.25. Now, you think that's a bad thing, and it is bad when you're talking about big ticket products. But America, let me say this real quick. Let me say this real quick. Yeah, 84% is get down or lay down. For real. You can't even get an 85% return rate at one of them payday loan spots or title bro. That is crazy work by itself, bro. Crazy work. But with that being said, I remember distinctly in 2007. In 2006, a can of green beans cost 69 cents. In 2007, it cost $1.63. There was no tariffs. There was no war. 2006, 69 cents. 2007, that same Dole or Del Monte can of green beans were $1.63. I was in the store with my boy Brown, like, what's going on? Like, what is this? I remember how the prices went up overnight. That would be the equivalent of 125% tariff tax. You've paid it before. You've done it right here domestically. I'm not saying whether it's right or wrong. I'm saying that it happens way more than it doesn't. Way more than it doesn't. It sounds crazy, like, wow. Because we're at 36%. They were already at 84. Another 50 cents on a dollar. It is what it is, bro. It's whatever. People are only talking about it because it's China. 194 other nations are going through this, but we only talk about China. Even though your PlayStation come from Japan. We don't even talk about Japan, but let's go.
5%. A Chinese finance official saying President Trump's most recent tariff increase on China to 145% will not create any economic damage and says it will become a joke in world economic history. Chinese President Xi Jinping saying China is not afraid. He has so far not reached out to President Trump to try to negotiate the trade dispute.
You know the one thing I love about that, bro? That we going to war with terrorists, bro. That's what's up. What Trump is trying to do is bring a drought. Because, if you can starve them out, you'll get your way. And you can flood your block with the product. But we're gonna talk about that a little bit later. We're gonna talk about that a little bit later. We're gonna get to the meat and potatoes of how Trump trying to make it a drought. I'm gonna show y'all something else real quick. It's gonna be a real quick show. We're gonna run through this.
Maryland says he's thrilled with the tariffs. His plant makes wire baskets and sheet metal for industries ranging from aerospace to food processing. Here's what one factory worker of his told us.
One of the products that we made was our competition was from Canada, and they were using Chinese steel, and it's become more profitable, and it's exciting. So very optimistic about it.
Joining us now is the CEO of Marlin Steel, Drew Greenblatt, who joins us from the floor of his company. Drew, thank you so much for joining us. So you say you're a big fan of the tariffs. Your company exports to dozens of countries, including China. Chinese leaders now say they're prepared for a full-on trade war with the United States. If China stops buying Marlin Steel, how much of a hit will your business take, or will the tariffs help you in other ways that make up for it?
Tariffs are going to be very good for the American manufacturing worker. We're very excited about this new leveling of the playing field. Right now, when we export, for example, this basket to Germany right here, it's a precision medical basket, a medical device basket. When we ship that to Germany, the German government taxes our clients $128.95 per basket. If a German competitor ships it to America, it's $1.25 per basket. It is so unfair what's happening to the American worker. They can't compete when you have that kind of unlevel playing field. We're talking about an opportunity
Wait, no
finally
sound?
to create a lot of millions of
What the hell's
American
going on?
jobs, middle class jobs, if we could get it fair. We're not looking for
No sound? No sound on that clip? Hold on, man. I'm gonna bring that back. I'm gonna bring that beat back. Bring that beat back. I got too many phones. What's crazy is I turned my ringer off and it's still wrong. Let me see if I can get the sound, bro. Let me see if I can get the sound. Its sound is just low. All right. I might be able to do something about that. See if I can do something about that. All right, we're going to bring it back. The sound should be better now.
Tariffs. His plant makes wire baskets and sheet metal for industries ranging from aerospace to food processing. Here's what one factory worker of his told us.
One of the products that we made was our competition was from Canada, and they were using Chinese steel, and it's become more profitable, and it's exciting. So very optimistic about it.
Joining us now is the CEO of Marlin's.
Yo, chat, is the sound better? Did it go up? Hopefully the sound went up. I'm gonna keep it pimping.
Drew Greenblatt, who joins us from the floor of his company. Drew, thank you so much for joining us. So you say you're a big fan of the tariffs. Your company exports to dozens of countries, including China. Chinese leaders now say they're prepared for a full-on trade war with the United States. If China stops buying Marlin steel, how much of a hit?
We're gonna come back to that. I do want y'all to hear that. I'll give you the synopsis. What happened was, because they put a tariff on foreign steel, this is a steel company. Because they put a tariff on foreign steel, it made it more advantageous for people who didn't buy cheap steel from China, the brittle steel from China, to use United States made steel. They're talking about the benefits of shopping at home. This is not a new argument. It's not. And we're gonna break it down real quick. Like I said, we ain't gonna be that long, bro. But it's gonna be. I want to give you guys a different perspective of what it is that they're trying to tell you in these streets. At the same time, though, boom. Let's try that. That volume should be a little bit better. All right, I turned the volume up again. Let's see.
Will your business take, or will the tariffs help you in other ways that make up for it?
Tariffs are going to be very good for the American manufacturing worker. We're very excited about this new leveling of the playing field. Right now, when we export, for example, this basket to Germany, right here, it's a precision medical basket, a medical device basket. When we ship that to Germany, the German government taxes our clients $128.95 per basket. If a German competitor ships it to America, it's $1.25 per basket. It is so unfair what's happening to the American worker. They can't compete when you have that kind of unlevel playing field. We're talking about an opportunity finally to create a lot of millions of American jobs, middle class jobs, if we could get it fair. We're not looking for something over the German factory workers or the British factory workers, the Chinese factory workers. We just want to be fair. If we're fair, the American technology, creativity, work ethic is going to just do extraordinary things, and we're going to create millions of American jobs with this new paradigm. It's wonderful news.
It would be great to have the American manufacturer from more Maryland's.
Let me tell y'all a quick story. Back in the day, my second legitimate job, right? My second real job was working for a German travel agency. It was called DER Tours, Deutsche Eurorail Tours, because Eurorail is really big in Europe, right? They take the train everywhere. Their train system is way better than America, way better than Amtrak. They got great trains. So it's Deutsche European Rail, right? Eurorail, DER. And part of that was we also handled everything. We were the travel agent's travel agent. We were the wholesale travel agency. So travel agents would come, they'll book their flight, their car, their hotel, their rail with us. We didn't do cruises, but everything else, transportation wise, DER did. One of the things that blew my mind as a young 19-year-old kid was when we were booking cars, the Ford LTD was a luxury car in Germany. That was like, and I spoke to one time I had the opportunity to speak to the German office. And I asked them about it. They said, well, because of the tariff, a Ford is a luxury car. It's a foreign car for Germany. Like, but at the meantime, y'all love Mercedes-Benz, but a Mercedes-Benz is our cop car. I said, oh, in Germany, Mercedes is their Ford. And at that point, I was like, yo, I don't even want a foreign car, bro. Like, I don't even want a foreign car. I'll do American. Because if they have things called, now you have a tariff tax. And then on top of that, they have something called the mechanical tariff, right? So if you have something that takes an engine, whether it's a car or a lawnmower, if it's oil that goes in that engine, they charge you an additional fee to ship it over. For those guys who've been to the Navy, how many of your friends bought a Benz in Germany and they had it shipped back through the Navy so they didn't have to pay the tariff? A Benz over there costs $16,000. When they get to America, it's $32,000, $28,000. And you're like, I got a luxury. You got an E-Class, bro. You got the equivalent of a Ford Taurus, and you running around like you just the hottest shit because you pay more because of the tariff. What they're saying is they want to equalize the playing field, but to equalize the playing field, that would mean that other countries would have to lower their tariff. Not necessarily we raise ours. They would have to lower theirs for the consumer to feel it in a real way. But that's not the game that people play when they got bread, right? Everything go up. Everything go up. That 69-cent can of peas becomes $1.63. Everything go up. And they call that leveling the playing field. Anyway, so I get it. Now, once again, even though there's a EU discussion on that, and I went to the BBC and all that, but it wasn't that exciting, so I'm not going to share that. The world is talking about Trump's tariffs, but America don't talk about the world. America doesn't care how the tariffs affect our allies, France, Germany, Italy, Britain. You won't hear about it, and they won't make too much of a fuss about it. You only hear about China because they're trying to make this they're trying to make China the new Cold War nation because everybody needs an op. For every Crip, there must be a Blood. For every Chicago Bear, there must be a Green Bay Packer. So they're trying to make China what Russia was, right? The Cold War Russia. Like, we never had beef with Russia. Russia was our ally in World War II. Russia won World War II. America takes all the credit. We talk about D-Day. That was one situation that we ran through with France. D-Day was crazy. That was one day. The rest of the time, America was like in Egypt. The rest of the war, they was in Northeast Africa. Russia won that war. Russia ran up in Germany and laid it down quite flat. Russia fought terrorism. Russia should be heroes. But instead, right after that, Cold War because the propaganda machine has to keep going. No matter what, somebody has to be the villain. So right now it's supposed to be China. So all we hear about is China, but yeah, the problem is when you start talking about tariffs, two things could be true at one time, right? Every time there's been a tariff war, dirty Russia's wild. Every time there's been a tariff war, it's followed by a recession. However, in my lifetime, in the 40 years I've been on this earth, I have lived through 4 recessions. I've never lived through a depression, but I've lived through 4 recessions. I was born into the Jimmy Carter recession. Of course, I don't remember it. I didn't have to stand in, I ain't have to be in a long line to get gasoline or, a loaf of bread. I was just born. But I was born when Jimmy Carter was president. The president when I started walking was Ronald Reagan, right? So we had a recession under Jimmy Carter in my lifetime. I mean, I was born. I don't remember it. We had a slight dip that they called a recession, but it wasn't under George Bush Sr. We got the money back under Bill Clinton because, Al Gore invented the internet. Shout out to that. Then we had another recession under George Bush Jr. In every recession, they tell you the same thing. Shop. You need to go shopping. If you don't shop, we can't get out the recession. Let me tell you something. That only works with women. That only works with women. As a man, I'm like, yo, if the money slow up, I need to save more money. Don't tell me to spend more money that I don't have. That makes no sense. That's why they market everything to women. And they market everything to men to give to a woman. Like, we're in a new time now. You got dirty folks selling soap for men. You have, and other people too. You have more things catering to men in the last 5 years. But this is after 120 years of all marketing saying, yo, men should buy something for their woman. Westinghouse saying you need to buy your woman a washing machine. De Beers telling you need to buy your woman a diamond. Everybody's saying do something for your woman. Valentine's Day, you need to buy for your woman. Sweetest Day supposed to be for you? Nah, nigga. Sweetest Day, Valentine's Day Jr. for your woman. And it's supposed to stimulate the economy. So we've been through recessions before, but they're giving the tariff credit or blame for the first major recession we had of 1828. And they're saying that recession led to the economy that led to the Civil War. Let's check this out real quick. This ain't that long.
In 1828.
Really? Stupid. It's because I'm black. It won't let me be great.
In 1828, Congress passed a tariff that increased the rates on imports into the United States to as much as 50%. This was the largest increase in the country's history. The aim was to protect American manufacturing in the North by making importing foreign goods more expensive. There were strong feelings.
Let me pause it right there. The goal from the North to the South, 1828, we're looking at a time in which the North was industrial, the South was agricultural, and the South had slavery, so they had a lower employee cost. It costs less per payroll, right? So it's less for manufacturing. You can sell it for cheaper, but they needed the raw materials. They needed the steel. They needed the railways, all the things that were made north, right? Made in Boston and New York. So, and we're also talking before the Civil War when the South had already created their own Confederate currency. Like every state had their own currency, but the South kind of united on how to exchange their currency. We didn't have greenbacks. Like every state can make their own do their own little thing. It's kind of like crypto is now. You can have a bunch of different type of crypto, but you can spend it anywhere. And the South was almost like another nation, which is Civil War, right? trying to be a separate nation. So the North was trying to put sanctions on the South for the South outsourcing to get cheaper materials. The problem with that is that the South, a major part of their economy was sending cotton and tobacco to Britain, right? Britain and France wanted American-made cotton and tobacco, which had nothing to do with the North. So the South had their own economic ecosystem with foreign nations that had nothing to do with a centralized state, because America is 48 contiguous states plus Hawaii, Alaska, and if you want to say Puerto Rico. 48 contiguous states, nation states, put together under one banner. But all 48 states, or at that time it was like 36, all 36 states at that time, they're all doing their own thing. They're self-governing. Right? Now America wants a king, because you got a bunch of girls talking with clothes on, and they want a king, and they think the president is king, and everything should be federal. But the whole way that the Constitution was built is so the federal government wouldn't have that much power. So the power goes down to the states, right? Which is what Trump did with abortion, right? Just kicked it back down to the states. And everybody got mad. Like, why the feds won't enforce, me killing my baby? Like, let your state do it, right? So what they're talking about is an economic war between the northern states and the southern states, which is very similar to now we're talking about an economic war between America and China. So I just wanted to make that parallel. But let's go.
In 1828, Congress passed a tariff that increased the rates on imports into the United States to as much as 50%. This was the largest increase in the country's history. The aim was to protect American manufacturing in the North by making importing foreign goods more expensive. There were strong feelings about the tariff of 1828. Reactions were divided by geography, and the country split in a way that would later be echoed by the division between the Union and the Confederacy in the Civil War.
Real quick, put a 1 in the chat if y'all can hear this, bro. I don't want to play it and y'all can't hear it. Put a 1 in the chat if y'all can hear it. Put a 2 if y'all can't, man. I don't know what's going on with the audio today.
People in New York, New Jersey, Delaware, Pennsylvania, Ohio, Indiana, Illinois, Missouri, and Kentucky generally supported the tariff. Meanwhile, Southerners nicknamed it the Tariff of Abominations. Residents of New England mostly opposed it as well, though not nearly as unanimously as in the South. Support of the tariff was one of the issues that helped decide the election of 1828. John Quincy Adams lost to Andrew Jackson. Jackson, however, disappointed his native South Carolina base by supporting the tariff to help pay the national debt. The tariff forced Southerners to buy manufactured goods from businesses in the North.
Let me pause this real quick. They talk about Andrew Jackson supported the tariff so they can pay off the national debt. Andrew Jackson is the president that killed the Federal Reserve Bank. Shout out to that. Andrew Jackson wanted to pay off the Federal Reserve Bank, which wasn't owned by America. Our Federal Reserve isn't owned by America now. John Quincy Adams Sr., right? Well, John Quincy Adams' dad. John Adams and Alexander Hamilton brought in foreign entities to run America's banking. And you had the First National Bank and the Second National Bank, or First Federal and Second Federal. I can't remember which it was called. And Andrew Jackson came in and said, let me pay these people off and get them about my way. And for the rest of his life, after he killed the central bank, they shot at that man his entire term. It has been said that on his deathbed, when he was laying on his deathbed a few days before he died, he said, man, I want to be remembered as the person who killed the bank. Andrew Jackson supported the sanctions so to get the bank about like right now, they talking about America got what, like a $6 trillion debt. To who? To who? We print our own money. To who? It's fiat currency. It's not even backed by gold. Why do we owe? Who do we owe $6 trillion to? The Federal Reserve Bank. But let's continue.
To Andrew Jackson. Jackson, however, disappointed his native South Carolina base by supporting the tariff to help pay the national debt. The tariff forced Southerners to buy manufactured goods from businesses in the North at high prices. On top of this, Britain was importing less cotton because their profits from exports had dropped, which also hurt the Southern economy. The tariff was reduced slightly in 1832, more of a gesture than a fix. By 1833, South Carolina was threatening secession. President Jackson compelled Congress to further reduce the punitive tariff rates, while also granting him the power to use military force against South Carolina if necessary. Congress passed the 1833 Compromise Tariff. This brought the rates back to a reasonable level, but the damage had been done. The reality of the country's deep economic divisions and disparate concerns had been brought into stark focus, causing tension that would simmer for another few decades and then spill over into the Civil War.
Fun fact. In our lifetime, just a couple of years ago, right? A couple of years ago. Wow, I'm frozen. A couple of years ago, we had Texas about to go to war against Joe Biden, right? Because Joe Biden's immigration laws were so egregious to Texans. The compromise was that they send all the migrants to Chicago and New York, right? Like let the sanctuary cities deal with it, right? But the Texas State Guard or National Guard, they were ready, bro. They were ready to go to war against the government. Now, I say that to say Andrew Jackson was about to go to war with South Carolina. What did South Carolina produce? Tobacco, marijuana, grains of some sort. But tobacco the major thing, and they moving tobacco and weed to Europe. South Carolina like, yo, you messing up my bread. I'm trying to be a dope dealer. You won't let me dope deal, right? You know what I mean? Hey, bro, get out my pocket. And they were ready to go against the Fed for that. The same way that Texas, during the right after the pandemic, was ready to go to war about all these illegal migrants, right? Every once in a while, blood must spill in order to water the roads of freedom, right? So what they're saying is that the first time we had tariffs, which wasn't even against a different nation, it was to unite this nation. It led to a recession. And that recession was part of the mitigating circumstances that led to the Civil War. I personally, I think that's a reach. I mean, I understand the tariff, but personally, I think that's a reach, especially now when you look at those same southern states, they probably get the most federal welfare of any other places in America. But they're blaming tariffs, right? You know what? I didn't even know I had this on here. Let him explain it better. Let this man explain it better. Of course it's a commercial. Of course it is.
Looks
Why
great.
not? Why wouldn't it be a commercial?
How much should people really worry about the balance of trade? somewhat less than you worry about being struck by lightning.
Okay, here's a statistic I heard just the other day. Here's how many cars Korea sells in the United States every year. 500,000. Here's how many cars we sell in Korea every year. 5,000. Why shouldn't we be worried about that imbalance?
I'm not sure why we should. Obviously, if the Americans were Americans forced at gunpoint to buy these cars from Korea?
Clearly not. No. So no problem.
I don't see why third parties should concern themselves about it.
Okay, you've done it again. You've batted away the question so easily that it leaves me wondering what the argument is on the other side. Why do some people worry about the trade balance then?
Oh, because the argument that they're making is that this is sending American jobs abroad. Now, unfortunately, this argument was made some years ago in 1930. 1,000 economists took out full-page ads across the country saying, do not put up international trade restrictions. It will not increase employment. It will just set off a new round of retaliation. It was one of those wonderful things the media like. It was a bipartisan effort. The Democratic Congress wanted to pass the Smoot-Hawley tariffs, and the Republican president signed it into law. And it was one of the biggest disasters in the history of the country. At the time this law, people think that the reason for the high unemployment in the 30s was because of the stock market crash.
Right.
After the stock market crash, unemployment peaked at 9% for 1 month and started downward. It was down to 6.3% before the federal government intervened. It was only after the federal government intervened that the downward movement reversed itself and shot all up over a few years to 25%. So the people who are out there just dying for the government to come in with their solution, I don't know if they have studied history or not.
All right, so the Smith Harley I messed up that name, but anyway, that was a 1928 tariff. They're saying the 1928 tariff created the Great Depression of the 1930s. It's easy to say the stock market. It's easy to say the Smoot and Harley tariff, right? But here's the real thing. Goes right back to banking, right? In the in the 19 teens, during Christmas break, I can't remember the name of the president, whoever the president was at that time, signed into law to bring back the Federal Reserve, right? But one of the first things they did in the roaring 20s, because everybody had money in the 20s, like everybody had money in the 1980s, cocaine was flowing, everybody had good jobs. 1920s was the roaring 20s. Everybody had bread, everybody was getting it out the mud. There was a book about it that I can't think the name of for anything. I've been trying to think of it for a week. And things developed like credit cards. Credit cards came out. Pay for stuff without having the money. And they promoted it. We got off the gold standard. So you can pay for stuff without money and without any arbitrary value. Right? They actually had federal agents going around in the 1920s taking people's gold. They would trade $5 in gold for a $5 bill, which is cool if you spend it. Woodrow Wilson, thank you, Mineral Mitch. They would give you a $5 bill for $5 worth of gold. The problem with that is, if you spend it that day, it's cool, but if you try to put it under your mattress, deflation, the dollar inflation of products, because you're on a fiat currency. So now you want fiat, right? You want the greenback. Shout out to Abraham Lincoln for making a centralized currency, right? You're on the greenback, which is fiat, and you're on credit cards, which is fiat. And they did that for a whole decade, almost two. Just spending money arbitrarily. Make it rain all the time, make it rain. And when it was time to pay Piper, there was money. What America had to do eventually after the Great Depression, what America had to do is go around the world, send investors all around the world, and make them agree to accept the United States dollars. It was fiat currency, right? And then they said, we'll back it by oil that they get. America had oil. Texas was full of oil fields, but we're going back by oil and keep our money by the barrel, but we're not on the gold standard. And that didn't even work until Britain decided that they also got the gold standard just like America. And then it was like, all right, let's stop getting currency, right? But a lot of this, when you start talking about tariffs, a lot of this starts way before then with how the banking works and based on the attitude of your leadership, right? So you have somebody like Jimmy Carter knocking out back. You have somebody like Bill Clinton that deregulates everything. So he got rid of the monopoly laws. You have somebody like Barack Obama, who some countries already didn't like America. A lot of nations like America have people who don't like you, they deal with your business sense, and then they got a bunch of money, and like, you know what, I'll just go to the BRICS. You have bad leadership. A bunch of hippies. Bill Clinton was a hippie. Played sex, smoked weed, fucked white girls, and now he in Harlem with white girls. He was a hippie. Barack Obama, hippie. When you hippies like that, they get policies that turn the world off. They go to snatch a ball, they go to that below, and then somebody has something. Donald Trump, Andrew Jackson, not Truman, and they try to stop bleeding and bring terrorists, right? They're like, yo, y'all giving the nation away. Y'all giving away the whole country. Like, yo, we got to get this back somehow. And the whole thing about that is, in the course of that, growing pains, right? You go through growing pains and you go through a dip. But let me show you guys something real quick. When we start talking about tariffs, remember that the America is 48 contiguous states plus, you know, Hawaii and Alaska. Every state has its own tariff tax. You call it a state tax, but it's still a tariff tax, right? Because if I'm in Illinois, right? If I'm in Illinois state tax is 6.5%, 6.25%, right? Then you have an additional Chicago tax of 7%. So we get anywhere between, depending on where you go, 11 to 13% tax on whatever we buy in the city, in Cook County, in the county of Cook, where 75-80% of Illinoisans live. Don't nobody really live downstate Illinois, right? If you downstate Illinois, a pack of cigarettes might cost you $8. You come to Chicago, that same pack of cigarettes costs you $18. We got bootleggers that sell cigarettes under the counter for $13. But you go downstate, $8. You go to Indiana, even though they sales tax statewide at 7%, they don't have a city tax. Those same pack of cigarettes be $9, right? Instead of $18. So tariffs work in Illinois, in America, state by state. You got somebody like Texas or Florida, they have zero state tax, right? Yeah. MMNOP. Now Texas state tax, y'all got 6.5%. You start talking about state tax, Texas is at zero, right? So you put the sales tax on top of the state tax. So that's what I'm talking. All right. Illinois got a 5% sales tax, and then you add on the 7% state tax. You at 13. You at 12%, right? Texas, 0. There's a couple places at 0. Florida, no income tax. Tennessee, no income tax. South Dakota, no income tax. They have a sales tax, but no income tax, right? So your cost of living is cheaper and your products are cheaper. But that's a sanction right there. If America was as united as they try to make America sound, then there would be a base fee. It will be a flat tax, right? There is no flat tax because every state is its own nation state. But we go through this right now. The tariffs, the way that they speak about it, when they talk about 195 different nations, 193 plus Palestine and the Vatican, 195 different nations. When they start talking about these taxes, we have 48 different taxes. If you ever take a road trip from New York to Cali, gonna be a bunch of different taxes. Let's continue though. I knew it was gonna be a commercial. I knew it. I knew they was gonna try to trick me. I knew they was gonna try to trick me with a commercial.
Will last because it does appear that these tech imports will be subject to a Section 232 investigation, which could take weeks or even months. We have to
let me set this up. I just let it ride. Let me set this up. So after that, because the gamers got so mad about they pre-orders of the PS5 and they pre-orders of the new iPhone, that Trump made a moratorium. He made an exemption on electronic products to give people enough time to get their pre-ordered products before they reenact the tariff. So he has not a moratorium. He has a pause on it in order for people to get stuff. So gamers won. Gamers won. They're like, yo, we don't even care about cars or cotton or corn. We don't care about that. But we better get our video game. All right, let's go.
Well, it's unclear how long this reprieve will last because it does appear that these tech imports will be subject to a Section 232 investigation, which could take weeks or even months. We have to keep in mind that when President Trump signed that initial executive order on April 2nd, it always excluded chips, as well as some other key industries like lumber, pharmaceuticals, and copper that could be subject to Section 232 tariffs on the basis of national security concerns. It now appears that these other tech imports, including consumer electronics, will fall under the sector-specific umbrella instead of the so-called reciprocal plan umbrella. As you said, President Trump just saying that this moved from one bucket to another. Now, with that said, when this White House has invoked Section 232 before, including on steel and aluminum imports, auto imports, they've implemented a 25% tariff rate. Let's just say, for the sake of the example, that ends up what goes into effect. That would be considered to be at least an initial victory for big tech, because that is so much lower than what could have been the now 145% tariff in across the board when it comes to Chinese imports. But still, some really big questions here, not just on the timeline uncertainty, but also how is the White House going to look at the full scope of these electronics? For example, are they going...
I'm not going to let it keep babbling. Once again, they talk about electronics from China. China... You know what? I'm not going to say it. I'm going to let the next gentleman say it. Because everything's about China. Everything's about China. But let's go.
There's a confusion about China that, and let me at least give you my opinion. The popular conception is that companies come to China because of low labor cost. I'm not sure what part of China they go to, but the truth is China stopped being the low labor cost country many years ago. And that is not the reason to come to China from a supply point of view. The reason is because of the skill and the quantity of skill in one location and the type of skill it is. Like the products we do require really advanced tooling. and the precision that you have to have in tooling and working with the materials that we do are state of the art. And the tooling skill is very deep here. You know, in the US, you could have a meeting of tooling engineers, and I'm not sure we could fill the room. In China, you could fill multiple football fields. It's that vocational expertise is very deep, very, very deep here.
You know what that sounds like? What he's saying about China being a technologically advanced nation, you know what that sounds like? Take down the Board of Education. It sounds like the Board of Education is not doing their job, so people have to outsource intellectual property. They're outsourcing for smart people. Before the Board of Education was created, America was #1 in education. After that, we dropped as low as 52 out of 195 nations. When you let a bunch of fat Karens and Keishas run anything, they go run it to the ground. They destroy everything. Projects, cities, homes, neighborhoods. Never let girls with clothes on do anything. They shouldn't even be able to cook with clothes on, to be honest with you, because the food might be better if they naked. That's what happened. So he's saying that what you practice is how you play, right? America is known for exporting entertainment. We're known as a nation of minstrels, right? We create sports, we create movies, we create music that goes global. Also known as military. Don't mess with us, we be back, right? But as export, that's what we know for. That's not what export is known for, right? What they're known for is concentrating on tech. Now, I don't necessarily can't go to San Francisco if I don't take these and make it happen. I'm sure it's really good. But like, the thing about China, the reason China isn't a low labor cost nation anymore is because China just again in order to actually act like a broker on the forex. So when what's Trump? I don't know Obama. It was a Trump Republican, either Trump or George W. And they told China, y'all gotta quit playing y'all money on person. Y'all gotta represent your you be bullshitting. And after they did a fair assessment of their national currency, so they no longer became what we consider cheap labor. Thailand, South Korea. There are other places, not even Japan, but Japan and China. There are other places you think of, like if I set up there, I can get it in, but just all that. But tariffs don't affect that, right? What it's talking about is the cost of intellectual property and the cost of business. What China did, as soon as the tariffs came out, China did started shutting down those places. Once it was longer, so he says intellectual minds, they can do this and the third. That's Germany. You want to be honest about it. That's Germany. You really want the best and brightest people. That's Germany. That's China. You don't be with Germany anymore, so you don't hear about it. That's a home valley. That's Korea, so you can't push. We have to go outside the nation. So you can't go. California expensive. But those are reasons, right? You just want cheaper qualified labor. And Germany has huge tariff, and China is now so it's become less fiscally responsible to also to places that can do the same thing you do at the crib. To be honest, if Silicon Valley moved from San Francisco to El Paso, Texas, and in the world, because the tax rate, California got a 50% tax rate. 50%. There are houses that I saw on the market when I was in 1997, 98. There were homes out there, bungalow, one floor. I don't think they got because they have too many earthquakes. A one floor brick ranch in Compton, suburb of LA, in Compton was $225,000. When you get a comparable home in Chicago, same brick, what is it? Same brick, one flat, 3 bedroom bathroom in Chicago. At the same time, they got it for $105. It was $2 million. Fast forward 30 years since I've been there. The same brick bungalow in Chicago has gone up from $105 to $170. That same brick bungalow that was $250 in Cali is now $2.5 million. That's just amazing. It's amazing. So the cost of that's crazy out there. What's my sound? I don't know. I hear fine, bro. I don't know what you guys hearing. I'm gonna blame it on Instagram. Anyway, that's it. I done froze again. Yo, hold on. Bam. Anyway, will this cause a recession? Probably. There's never been a time in which, in the 3 times America had tariffs, we had a recession. But let me tell you something. in 2016, there was a report that the American dollar would be devalued. It won't be the default currency by the year 2030. They also had in 2018, they had a report that at 2030, they would have the NWO thing going on where you will own nothing and be happy. 2030 has always been the targeted year where they would bring the NWO in. And there would be a great recession, and there would be a great, and FEMA will be on top. That what they were scheduled to be into. Too many women, right? They messed up South Carolina, and now people are auditing FEMA. But FEMA was set up to make these little FEMA camps, these little the pods, you know what I mean? All that was about to happen. By 2030, they were already setting it up. So if we do have a recession, it was already scheduled 14 years in advance. 14 years in advance. When I started talking about the tribe up thing on Facebook, I'm telling people like, look, bro, and people can see it, and y'all still can't really see it, but I'm like, yo, we gotta prepare for 2030. So if it's a recession after this, there's gonna be a recession anyway. But will it be? Probably. We have a recession every decade. I've been through 3 recessions, bro. Every decade we have a recession. And they'll blame it on Trump, but they won't blame it on mitigating factors. But it's a crazy work when you're doing a 36% sales tax or a tariff tax, if you want to call it that, and somebody hitting you with 84%. Then you go up to match them. You're like, all right, we're going to hit you with the 85%. And they say, yo, we're going to go to 125. And nobody thinks it's a problem with that. Nobody thinks a fair exchange ain't no robbery. Nobody thinks that a lopsided economy, people think this. Anyway, that's all I got to say about that, man. I appreciate everybody coming through, man. Click like on your way out the door. Let me see something real quick. Do we have a sponsor of the show? Yeah, we do, man. Shout out to y'all boys credit, man. I ain't even getting no alert. Shout out to Cash Apps real quick. Get a shout out to Mineral Mitch with a $4 Cash App. He said, Tariffs, gratitude, sir. Oh, shit. What happens to my thank you button? Oh, this is a new screen. Anything different. And shout out to XL Pro for the $8 Cash App tribe support. Man, thank you, sir. And shout out to King Zach for the $80 Cash App for knowledge, wisdom, and understanding, man. Gratitude, sir. Anyway, as always, man, love your brothers as you love yourself. Feed the pack. Tribe Buck.